Good morning. Welcome to the book reading session. My name is Krishna. I live in Pennsylvania, and thanks again. What we'll do is in about half an hour, 45 minutes, I'll tell you the story behind the story. So then we can have a question and answer and a discussion, and then we would love to have a picture with all of you. And before I start, thanks a lot to all the organizers, Eric, Richie, Venkat, and Jason, the photographer. So here we go. Like most people, I'm fond of sweets, from laddu to jalebi to chocolates. And like most people, I really gave a thought as to how sugar or jaggery, the key ingredient in all these sweets, is made. How is sugar grown or processed? I really gave it a thought. And more than likely, I would not have given a thought to sugar but for the curiosity of my roots. Growing up in Hyderabad, India, I heard a lot of stories about my grandfather, my father's father. My grandfather had died young when my dad was a baby. So my grandmother, who was very close to me, would narrate stories about her South African educated, handsome husband. She would tell stories about how he would sit cross-legged, how he spoke well, and how he had very good handwriting. In all the stories, some of the stories that were interesting were she would say, your grandfather's family would switch to Afrikaans whenever they wanted to talk about something in secret. Like a master weaver spin colorful threads into a magical carpet, she would insert morals and lessons into the stories. Don't be profligate. Don't be carried away by false praises. Evidently, my great-grandfather trusted those who surrounded him and lost all his hard-earned money. There were stories about my great-grandfather as well. Viriah, and grandmother was close to her father-in-law, that is my father's father's father, and she would talk about how he had a very tragic and a poor end. And I was listening to these stories, and there was one interesting story where she would tell me, your great-grandfather told me that he met Gandhi and often remarked that Gandhi chala gattu. In Telugu it means Gandhi was a cool dude. She said he got a great deal when Gandhiji was assassinated. I could never make the connection between my great-grandfather and Gandhiji, and she would remark, your great-grandfather was called as a boiler Sardar. So I'm going with these stories, and there was yet another interesting story about my grandfather's sister. My great-grandfather had 6 sons and 1 daughter, and the only daughter stayed back in South Africa. So growing up, I knew that there is some part of my family in South Africa, but all we had was an address in Tongaat, from which we rarely got any replies. And this was an interesting family tree project. I would ask my grandmother, my relatives, trying to understand more. And when I was in my 20s, I started research in more serious mode. I started writing to some researchers in South Africa, and one of the researchers said, Krishna, it is very difficult to get information about indenture coolies. That was the first time I heard about this word indenture. I looked up online, and what I read shook me up. 1.3 million Indians were sent off as indenture coolies to the Caribbean, to South Africa, to Mauritius, to Fiji, and this is one of the prominent pictures from indenture studies. So I'm looking at this picture, and by that time I'm trying to put a rough timeline about when my great-grandfather might have gone, and one evening it struck me that my great-grandfather was one of those indentured coolies. And I cried, and then the search was no longer a family project. I wanted to know my roots. I wanted to know him. And for the next couple of decades, it was all the search for my great-grandfather. So it started off with writing to all embassies, writing to all Indian associations in Durban, and the only name I had, Daniel Naidu. So I would look up Daniel Naidu, then I realized Naidu is such a common name in South Africa. I would get a lot of replies. So those were the days of the Nigerian bank scam. If you remember, you would get a lot of emails that you had a friend and you had to put money. So I got a lot of replies from Daniel Naidu's in South Africa saying, "Oh, Krishna, you are in the US, maybe we should do some business," and so on. And during the journey, I ran into what is called as a ship list. So Dr. Surendra Bhana, God bless him, he is one of the South African Indian indentured progeny. He teaches at Ohio. So he went back to South Africa in the 70s with students, and they took all the old registers of the ships, so the coolies who came from India to South Africa, and they painfully entered it into a database. And the database of 150,000 coolies. So they had the name, age, the ship number, and so on and so forth. So it was split into 7 or 8 pieces. So I collected all the databases. I put it all together into one huge Excel sheet of 150,000 rows. And for the next decade, it was all trying to look at and trying to find my great-grandfather in this list. So during the search, I realized that you had coolies who would knowingly or unknowingly change their age or their caste. And imagine landing off a boat after 4 months, 5 months, and it all depended on the officer, whether it was Guyana or Durban or Mauritius, right? How they heard what name you were saying and how they wrote it down. So the list itself was suspect from that perspective, that the spelling probably was not correct, and the researchers were telling me that Krishna, these coolies change sometimes their name and their age, but I knew this was the only resource I had. So I would look up for a name which sounded something like Viriah, and if I found the record, I would send it to the researchers, and I would wait for 2-3 weeks, and then they would come back and say, no, we didn't find anything, or they would say this person died on the farm, and sometime later, the South African government opened up a database, if at all they had a legal issue with any of the coolies, it was entered into a database. So that search again took the next few years. And Jason, so this is interesting for you. Okay? So there is this Greek king, right? His name is Sisyphus. So he was punished by, he had to roll a very immense boulder up the hill, and he rolls up the boulder, and then no longer he reaches the top, the boulder will roll down. So I was convinced that I had the curse of Sisyphus. Year after year, I would, try to find a name, and then I would be all excited, write to them, and they would come back, and then lie low, and then start all over. And this goes on, and after almost about 2 decades, I just gave up, because by that time, I had written to practically every known researcher in South Africa. They were all bored with me. I had written to embassies, associations. I had done pretty much anything I could. And by that time, a small miracle had happened. I found one part of my family in South Africa. As I said, my grandfather had one sister and her family lived there. We had one address, but I found one part of it, but they didn't have any clue of the larger picture. So in 2014, I said I gave up, and I decided to just go to South Africa. It was 20th of December. I told Binu, my wife, I wanted to go to South Africa. She was silent for a long time. Why, she asked. The search is over. I failed. And maybe I'll feel better if I just stand on the same ground that my great-grandfather once did. Where will you stay? She asked. I don't know. I'll figure out something. I remembered that we had planned to visit friends for the New Year celebrations. Travel from USA to South Africa was about 24 hours each way, which meant it had to be a very short trip. So the next few hours I spent vacillating over the idea of a short 4 or 5 day trip, which seemed chaotic at best. I decided that if this is what is in store for me, so be it. I immediately bought a ticket to Durban the next day and with a plan to stay there for 4 days. With just one address in Tonga, Natal, a rough sketch of the family tree, a zillion butterflies in my stomach, and a prayer on my lips, I boarded a South African Airways flight from New York to Durban on December 21st, 2014. The 16-hour flight from JFK to Joburg felt like eternity. The images from my childhood, countless conversations with my grandmother, the dark maze of the ship lists, and the innumerable futile attempts. The Facebook moment, the fleeting hope that I might find something about my great-grandfather overwhelmed me. After a 2-hour layover in Johannesburg, I took the much shorter 1-hour flight to Durban. My heartbeat grew louder and was sweating profusely as the plane approached Durban. So I landed in Durban, and I find this powerful relative, and the first thing I ask him is, can you take me to the archive? Looking back, I realize it's stupid to begin with, because here is some relative who comes out of nowhere, and the first thing he asks is, can you take me to the archive? So on December 24th morning, I go to Pietermaritzburg archive, and Pietermaritzburg, for those of you who are not aware, is the place where Gandhiji's journey for Satyagraha started. This was the place where he was pushed out of the train, even though he had a first-class ticket. And Pietermaritzburg is an important place where most Indians who go to South Africa, they visit. So it's at the train station, they have a mural, and then a photo library of Gandhiji. And that's the place I went. And there is this researcher that I find in the archive, and they start with the same narrative. My great-grandfather came here, he had 6 sons, he had a daughter, and I don't know exactly when he came. And she said, yeah, there are millions of people like you who are looking for ancestors. After a couple of hours, she said, it's Christmas Eve. The archive had to be closed by 12 o'clock. And about an hour and a half before closure time, she asked me a strange question. She said, did you check the list of the coolies who went back to India? And I said, no. And she said, maybe that's a place that you could, but now we have only less than an hour, and maybe you should come back in January. And I kept begging her for some time, and what happened on that day in the archive is a miracle that I never can really explain. So here was a lady, a South African clerk in the archive who had no reason to help, somebody who was looking for an ancestor. It was almost closure time, and she said, thank you very much. So the clock struck 12:00, zilch. By the time she had given me 2 or 3 registers to look for the names, and because I didn't know which year he went back, it was not helping. The clock struck 12:00, zilch. The game was over. The entire search was for nothing. I kicked myself for planning this crazy trip to begin with. I should have been with my wife and daughter for the holidays, and here I was in this reading room, still looking for a needle in a field of haystacks. How many times did grandmother try to tell you to give it up? Seriously, zip. The entire journey, with all its highs and lows, swished through me. All the dreams I had of connecting with my roots to find my great-grandfather had come true. By this time, it was well past noon, and the receptionist and the other staff were getting impatient. They gave the research assistant not so friendly stares. It was time to close the office. Sorry, grandmother, I lost. I failed you, I said. It was time to face the truth. I could not find my roots. With tears welling up in my eyes, I stood up to leave. Alas, the search had finally ended. As I stood up, I looked within myself for that one last thread of hope, and I found a speck of hope left. There was one tiny fading fragment left at the bottom. I held on to it like a precious diamond, and I told myself, let me give one final shot. I'm not finished yet. I begged the assistant for a few more minutes, knowing fully well that it was impossible to search all the registers. She said, one last register. Absolutely, okay? Yes, ma'am, I said. What year do you want me to search? I stayed blank theater, hopeless, innovated and lost. I don't know. Maybe you could pick a date. Any date, I said. Now it did not matter anyway. She returned quickly with the register of the year 1932. The time was 12:15. 15 minutes past the archive's closing time on Christmas Eve, when everyone wanted to start preparations for the most important holiday of the year. I was crestfallen. 1932 was definitely not the year. 12:30 p.m. It was half an hour past closing time. The lights clicked off. The other staff members walked towards the door, and the research assistant politely and firmly pointed out yet again that the time was up. I was trembling like a leaf in the storm, sweating profusely, requesting for more time. I held on to the register like a person drowning in the ocean, clinging to a life preserver. She would have tear it out of my hands. Suddenly I paused. On the page, 7 or 8 passenger names seemed familiar. My heart stopped and I turned pale, staring at me with the names of my great-grandfather and his children. Viriah, I was paralyzed. I kept staring at the page blankly. It was not real. Obviously, it could not be. The thoughts and memories of all the endless nights pouring over the checklists, the surreptitious attempts, all the prayers and pleadings, the never-ending queries to the receptionist. It all came together, jumbled up in a deafening crescendo. Lightheaded, I looked at the names carefully. A gazillion fireworks went off in my head. My grandmother was with me in the room that day, for there was a family written in black ink on the page. I find the ship record, and the search probably took about 2 decades, but it took me barely less than a day to put the rest of the puzzle together. So I now knew when he went to South Africa, when he returned, and the farms where he had worked. And the following day had another miracle where I traced an aunt, my father's first cousin, a lady whom we never knew existed. So definitely search where my father was meeting his first cousin when both of them were in their 70s. I completed the family tree, and now we have families in India, in South Africa, and the US reunited. But the question remained as to why did Indian sugar indenture have to happen? You had more than 1 million Indians who were shipped off. Now, 3 parts to this story. So the first part is something about the Indian history, second part something about slavery itself, and the third part about sugar history. So by 350 AD, during the golden age, as we call it, during the age of Samudragupta, you had the know-how in India as to how to have processed sugar, as to how to make white processed sugar. And that knowledge spread to Persia and China, but the real action started around 1440, where a Portuguese ship captain, he grabbed two African slaves and he took them as a gift to his king. So that started the rush of modern slavery as we know. In 1493, you had Christopher Columbus, who took slaves and sugarcane to Hispaniola. Most of us here may have gone to Dominican Republic for vacation. Dominican Republic and Haiti together is Hispaniola, which is where Christopher Columbus planted sugarcane, and his son, his grandsons, they were amongst the richest people in Hispaniola, largely because of sugarcane. And by 1600, when you had Maria Medici from the very rich Medici family in Italy, who married King Henry IV of France, one of the biggest things they showed off in that wedding was sugar sculptures. What you see here is the statue of Venus, which is made out of sugar. So the demand for sugar was growing, but from only kings, now you had the very wealthy people who wanted to make fancy things out of sugar. And in the background, you had slaves growing sugarcane in Brazil and Haiti. So if you look at slavery, say between 1440 to 1700, you had 13 million slaves who were taken from Africa. That's 1-3. So out of 13 million, close to 70% of slaves, 70%, worked on sugarcane plantation. So in Brazil, Caribbean, Haiti, that's where most of modern day slavery happens. And in the background, when you look at the Indian history, an important event was happening where in the year 1600, you had the British East India Company, which was approaching the Mughal emperor to trade with India. So at one end, you had the East India Company trying to set roots in India, and guess one of the first products they had was tea. The East India Company was trading in tea initially. And whereas in the other part of the world, you had slaves toiling in Brazil, Caribbean, Haiti, growing sugarcane, and the demand for sugar keeps increasing. And I thought, having Boston, there's going to be something related to Boston and slavery. So I read this box this morning, so it didn't come at the correct spot. But in 1773, something important happened in Boston, right? So the Boston Tea Party. So the freedom fighters here, they were dumping tea. So where was the tea coming from? The tea was coming from the East India Company, right? Who by then, in 1757, the East India Company, they were in Bengal, the richest kingdom. Right? Bengal apparently was richer than all of Europe in 1757. So the East India Company, they get the cousin of the Nawab, or Sirajuddaula, to plot against him, and Mir Jafar probably is the most well-known trader in history. So that's how East India Company, they were in Bengal, and within the next 50 years, they run through the rest of India. Right? And East India Company, they are pushing tea, which they sold from India and China to Europe. So more people start consuming tea, and so the demand for tea, coffee, and sugar, right, is increasing. And where is sugar coming from? Sugar is coming from the plantations in the Caribbean and Brazil, right? So the race keeps going on. So more slaves, more sugarcane, and more demand for sugar. And by close to 1800s or so, the middle class start consuming sugar, so the demand is increasing. Around 1793, another important event happens in the history of slavery. So in Haiti, you have the slave rebellion, the first slave rebellion. By 1800, Haiti is kind of free, and the whole abolitionist movement starts. So by 1834, slavery is legally abolished in the British Empire. So by this time, you had 13 million slaves trotting away in Brazil and Caribbean from Singapore. And by this time, the plantation owners, they are used to slave labor. And they go and petition the queen saying, you are taking the slaves away, so where will we get cheap, lot of free labor? By that time, something else was happening in India. So between 1760 and 1860, in just 5 famines, you had 35 million Indians who were killed. 35 million Indians. So before the British came, the Nawabs or the kings would forgive your taxes, they would build temples, dams, or whatever to create some employment. But with the British, they would extract every pound of tax, they killed all the local industry. So you had people who were desperate for survival. So at one end, in India, you had a lot of people desperate for food. At the other end, you had a lot of farms in the Caribbean, in South Africa and Mauritius, looking for a lot of labor. So all this comes together, where in 1834, a ship called Atlas left from Calcutta carrying 34 coolies to Mauritius. So thus started the Indian indenture race. So between 1834 and by the time it legally ended in 1917, you had close to 1.3 million Indians who were shipped off from Calcutta and Madras to these countries. When you think about how the whole system happened, it's fascinating because 1.3 million Indians, and think of it, this is happening in 1850s, right? No trains, no railroads, and how would you get so many coolies and how would you ship them? So if you think of 1.3 million people, that's roughly about 500 coolies every week for 70 years. So you had this system of depots and sub-depots. So if you look at slightly larger cities like a Kanpur or a Lucknow, they would have depots, or a Vijayawada or a Rajahmundry had a depot, and the ports are Calcutta and Madras, and smaller towns, say maybe Muzaffarpur, would have a sub-depot, or Eluru or Tanjavur would have a sub-depot. So you would go to villages and you would try to get these coolies. So I think this is how my great-grandfather got indentured. By this time, my great-grandfather, a teenager, he runs off from home, and he's gone to a place called Vijayawada. It's a slightly larger town in South India. A few weeks later, a trip to the temple changed his life forever. When Viriah walked up, he saw a large crowd gathered near the temple. In the middle of the crowd stood an English officer, dressed in a suit and a hat, with a Telugu clerk beside him in a turban and a clean shirt with a dhoti tied around his waist. A drummer stood next to him, pounding dum dumadum to announce their presence. The clerk held up the poster for all the crowd to see. It was in English, and the clerk was translating, Pani, 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 Nelika 5 rupai in Telugu, work, work, work. 5 rupees per month. The clerk continued. Food and rations would also be given. He motioned to the drummer, who belted out a series of beats, dum dumadum. Once the drummer stopped, the clerk repeated, work, 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 5 rupees a month. Ignored by a starving stomach, Viriah's mind raced furiously. The daily wages for a coolie were at best 3 annas. In a month, it was impossible to find work every single day. Finding work was difficult as the job depended on the season and the weather. Harvest time, maybe some more work. But typically he spent half his days working and the other half looking for a job, growing hungrier and hungrier all the while. So he reasons, even if I work hard and work extremely lucky, I could earn at best 48 annas or 3 rupees a month. 5 rupees sounded very suspicious. Middle in the crowd was the Arkati. The others were oblivious to his presence, but the Arkati was observing all the people in the crowd very carefully. These were the unlicensed agents whose job was to recruit coolies for indenture. They would hang out near markets, temples and train stations, trawling for people who might be looking for work and who were vulnerable. Viriah walked off and sat under a tree. The Arkati followed him. Lighting up a beady cigarette, the Arkati said, "You don't look like you're from Vijayawada. Do you want to be?" Viriah glanced at him. He just wanted to be left alone. "You look like a nice man," the stranger said. A faint smile escaped Viriah's lip. Smelling a catch, the Arkati said, "Where are you from?" "Kurlapadu," Viriah said. The Arkati sucked on his beady and exhaled a stream of smoke. "I know someone from that place who went to Natal and made a lot of money." The bait was tempting for the fish, but 5 rupees? That's a lot. Will they really pay 5 rupees? Viriah wondered. "Absolutely," the Arkati said. "You don't know the English government. There's a paper for every coolie with the salary, and it has a queen's seal on it." He paused to let the effect of the queen's seal sink in. Awestruck, Viriah said, "The queen's seal?" "Yes," the Arkati said. "The queen's seal means it's guaranteed. No one can change it." "That's nice. I'd like to send money to my parents," Viriah said. The fish was tasting the bait now. "What work is it?" "It's work on a sugarcane farm. Easy for people like you." Think about it. The fish bit the bait, hook, line, and sinker. "What do I have to do?" "Nothing. I'm here now. I'll take care of you. Just come back here tomorrow with your belongings." And so he walks with the Arkati to a sub-depot where they wait for weeks and weeks, then he gets on the ship. Is there anybody in the room who hasn't heard of the Titanic? A tragedy by any means, but in 1859 there was a ship called Shah Alam, which left Calcutta with 400 coolies and the crew to Mauritius. So on the way, the ship caught fire and it sank. Right? So all the 70-odd crew members were saved. Now, can anyone guess the number of coolies who were rescued?
Probably 0.
Now, when during this search and reading, I felt sad about the tragedy, and more importantly, there's hardly any history books, especially in India or anywhere, which mentions the Shah Alam kind of tragedy. You could Google Shah Alam, and at best you'll get 2 or 3 links. Right? And during the whole indenture saga, you had a mortality where almost 20% of the coolies sometimes would die on the ships. So these are the records from the ships which went to Caribbean. So in from 1860s, 1870s, if you notice, if you had 700 passengers, you would have maybe, sometimes 100 passengers would die on the ship. And the only mode was in the middle of the night, you say a prayer and you just dump the body into the ship. And the ship and the Jahaji boys, that's an interesting story as well. So my great-grandfather, he went on this ship, which the name was Unkuzi. So here goes. He and he makes some friends, they're all on this ship. The Unkuzi was a huge melting pot of people from all religions, castes and colors. Gulla, shepherds, Chamar, untouchable leather workers, Dhobi, washermen, Kumar, potters, Brahmin, the highest caste in Hinduism, Rajputs, the warrior castes, Kasab, Muslim butchers, Tevi, oil pressers, and more. In those days, if a Brahmin touched an untouchable, or the other way around, the Brahmins would bathe and perform rituals to get rid of the impurity. The untouchables would be punished for the grievous crime of polluting the Brahmins with their touch. But on the ship, it would not be the same. Coolies from the higher castes, like Brahmins and Rajput, protested initially, but their protests came from nowhere. On the ship, everyone was just a coolie, and all of them had to live and share the same cramped space on the lower deck. 500 to 600 coolies for 3 months, 4 months. In a way, the time spent in the depot and the ship helped these coolies to come in terms with the harsh reality. Thousands of years of social structures and customs crumbled like the indenture altar. On the ship, they all blended into one shade, poor and desperate for a better life. They became Jahaji Bhais, or ship brothers. And after landing in Durban, Guyana, or Trinidad, after 3 months or 4 months, these coolies would have to walk to their farm. So my great-grandfather walked about 75 kilometers. So I have 2 friends from my home, South Africa, so they would know where is Tanga. So to go to the Gledawa state, most likely they walked from Durban and all the way to Stang. And life on the farm for these coolies, it was almost like that of a slave. To leave the farm, you needed a pass, and close to 75 to 80% of the coolies, slaves, they did not see anything beyond the farm. They would have been there for 15, 20 years, but they saw at best 3 square kilometers, the area of the farm. And they would get whipped for the slightest of mistakes. Their food, their rations, their pay would get withheld depending on the whims and fancies of the farm owners. And this is the time that my great-grandfather is already on the farm. It rained incessantly all day, and the coolies were at work with little protection from nature's elements. Drenched to the bone, they returned to the barracks to find that the firewood was wet, which meant only cold mealies to satisfy their hunger. Mealies as corn, right? Ground corn, that's what they would eat. The next morning, Viriah, my great-grandfather, woke up feeling as if his body was on fire and shivered like a thin leaf on a stormy night. The leaky roof let in a steady stream of raindrops. He was too weak to move, and as he lay there, he missed his mother more than ever. He remembered how she would raise a fit when he caught a cold as a child. During the rainy season, young Viriah would play with his friends all day in the rain, and usually returned home thoroughly wet and shivery. Papama, his mother, would quickly make hot kashai, Indian home remedy for colds, by boiling milk and sprinkling in turmeric, black pepper, ginger, cloves, and cumin. She would serve it to Viriah with tender love, pleading with him not to play in the rain for so long. Then she would scold the rain for not stopping all day long for shoveling her love, which delighted Viriah, who had already been thinking of the games for the next day. Teary-eyed, Viriah felt his mother's warm kashai in his throat and gulped empty air, remembering her feeding him. He had only some cold leftover meals of food. And about the coolie woman, to me, in this whole journey, I thought the true heroes in the whole Indian saga were the coolie women. These were the women who were trying to flee maybe oppression at home or maybe looking for a better life. But they were harassed right from the depots, the long journeys. Sometimes they would get separated from their families, and they would get paid half ration, half wage. Yes. Half wage, half ration, they would have to work equally hard, and when they would come home, they would try to help their family, and on the weekends they would sell vegetables and fruits in the market. So it is because these coolie women. Today, you have got about 4.5 million Indians in these colonies. Now, between South Africa to Mauritius to the Caribbean, the total number of Indians is about 4.5 million. And if you look at some of the famous ones, Alan Kalicharan, my favorite cricketer, Sundar Popo. For those of you who like music, Sundar Popo is god of chutney music. So you should just YouTube Sundar Popo, and he mixed Bhojpuri Avdi with English, and absolutely mellifluous songs. And it's very, very nice to listen. So Sundar Popo, a very famous person in Caribbean, and most of the prime ministers in Mauritius obviously are Indian. Vijay Singh, PJ Cham from Fiji, V.S. Nepal, a Nobel Prize winner, and Nicki Minaj, her father has and grandfather have Indian roots. And she announced her retirement yesterday. She wants to take a break. But I thought at least when you have youngsters in the crowd, everybody said, okay, they know Nicki Minaj. So these are some of the famous Indians. And we don't learn from history. In the Middle East today, just some rough numbers for you. So out of a population of about 57 million, close to about 50% is foreign nations, and you have close to about 8 million Indians who work only in the 6 countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council it's called. So you've got Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, so I think Naren would have worked in some of these places. So the life of a kafala laborer is as bad as it was for my great-grandfather. You can't leave the construction site without a pass. They won't get paid for weeks and months. And in the heat, in the Middle East, we have temperatures which actually touch close to 50 degrees centigrade. And these coolies have to work about 12 hours out on these construction sites, and they get only 2 breaks a day, about 15 minutes each. And the photograph that you see in the middle, right? This is the photograph, the rush to catch the bus from the site. Because if they miss the bus, there's no way to go back to the site, which is often outside the city. And one of the few photographs that I could get hold of, so you have 6 to 8 laborers who live in one small cramped room. You could be living there for 5 years or 10 years, whatever duration, right? And this is all the space that you have for the time to store whatever belongings that you possess. So this is where we stop. To close off during the book writing journey, one of the nice things I wanted to share with you is that Gandhiji's progeny actually is based in South Africa. His son Manilal went back to South Africa, so his children, grandchildren, they all have done real social service to South Africa. Ella was a parliamentarian, and Uma Mestri is a professor and historian in Cape Town. And she helped me with the book, and she connected me to some people. In fact, the photograph of the indentured coolies is from her book, and I sent her the book, and it was nice to get her feedback. And she did work in Peter Management Archives, and he said she liked the book. So thank you very much. So Joyce, we are on dot. We're at 11:50. The website is on. So we launched the website just a couple of days ago. So minor things, but hope I'll keep on adding more content, trying to at least put some good literature relating to indenture as well. So hope you like the website, and so the book is available online. And I got some copies as well if somebody wants to get a book. So now for the next 15-20 minutes, we can have questions or group discussion. Yes, Vish.
So obviously obviously in the book there's much more material that you can't cover in a short presentation. So I'll ask you two things which I found very interesting, which you could not cover in this material. Talk about social media and how when you restarted the search after 2014 when you gave up, how social media helped you a lot, which was not available before that. Right? That was one thing. And second thing was talk about re-indenture. Why your grandfather, why your great-grandfather had to re-indenture. Why the math, the arithmetic of salary and cost was such that basically you could not come out of the trap.
Thank you. So on the social media part, so in the first half of my search, more maybe going to some mailing lists, Indian associations and so on. And by 2012, 2013, I was almost giving up, where I realized the one contact I had in South Africa was one letter that was written in 1990. So he wrote to me about his two children, and were a year or two. And in 2013, and I'm not sure if I can find the page now, but I was thinking about what else would I do. I had done all the embassy, ship list, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, what if the two children of my cousin, they should be around 18 or 19 now, what if they are on Facebook? Because by this time I was looking for Daniel Naidu all the time. And it was a crazy moment, because I had told my daughter is 16 now, that if somebody sends you an email or a post saying I'm your cousin or your uncle, the first thing you should do is delete that. Right? You should never touch it. And here I am looking for a kid in Durban. Right? And after a week or two, I find somebody with that same name, so Dane Naidu. And I was scared, because by the time I knew the legal implications as well. And then I keep staring at this picture and I think she could be the person. And after a couple of sleepless nights, then I write to her with that same stupid thing that I keep telling my daughter not to do. I said, then I'm your uncle. And so I was scared. But then she replied saying, Uncle Krishna. And I cried, because after so long, it was like an oasis where she replied, and at least there was one branch of the family that I could connect to after so long. So that's how Facebook, in a way, helped me. And to Yogesh's second question, right? So the schoolies, they were promised 5 rupees a month salary, but more often than not, after you go, they would say, like my great-grandfather, okay, you're sick, you didn't turn up for work, so 1 week wages cut. Or they would say, you didn't complete your quota for the sugarcane, so 2 weeks pay gone. So like that, by the end of the indenture period of about 5 years, the schoolies think that they could be free, because what was promised was after 5 years, you'll be free, you'll give a small plot of land, you can grow vegetables, whatever. So for a lot of Indians, that was one incentive. But after 5 years, these guys would say, oh, okay, who is going to pay for your ship fare? So the schoolies didn't even know as to what was the ship fare, how did they get there in the first place. And these people would say, okay, so either you pay me 25 pounds or you get re-indenture. So with that, these people would go into multiple cycles of re-indenture, and at the end of it, they could hardly save anyone. Yes.
So I have a comment. My husband and I are both the offspring of the indentured labourers in South Africa, and we are proudly South Africans, and we're glad that our parents didn't return for many reasons, and it has positive and negative. So I'm glad they didn't return, and I'm glad that they had the opportunity to mingle with the other castes, because we don't have a system in South Africa that's called a caste system. So we are totally unaware. So my growing up here, meeting fellow South Africans, South Indians, they always ask, so which caste do you belong to? And I always say the human caste, because we never ever brought up in that environment. And the second thing is that I think the only issues we have is when they play play cricket, South Africa and India, who do we go? We back both of them. So, yeah, I think the only thing about kind of living in South Africa is that we both had to grow up in apartheid, and where that was a very strict thing, and we couldn't travel without a passport, or I think it was a pass. But these were many years ago that we couldn't walk around. We were segregated in the way we lived, the whites only bathrooms, white only beaches and stuff. And we had our trials and tribulations, but however, yeah.
So I have a question. What are the languages that are spoken by Indians in South Africa?
So predominantly right now it's English, right? But growing up in the British colony, that was also Dutch, heavily influenced by the Dutch. Afrikaans was our second language. That was a language that was pushed down our throat. If you don't pass that, you cannot pass medicine. So you have to pass those two languages. We still speak English in our families. However, I think my mom was the last set of people that spoke some form of Hindi or Tamil or something. But my grandma did speak a little bit, and that's how we learned. The reason why we know little Hindi is thanks to Bollywood. We read the subtitles and we know what's going on in that way. So yes, so with every generation that pass, we're losing some form of our, culture.
So most of the people in South Africa now, English is their first language. So at home they might speak some of their native language, but theirs or maybe more the grandparents and anything else. But although some people are still, some of the kids are still, they're trying to learn, they do have classes and so on. So they're trying to keep the culture, and of course all the Bollywood movies help. And a lot of singers have come to South Africa, so they have a lot of concerts, actors have come and visited, so the culture is very live, very thriving in South Africa. In certain parts, you'll actually wonder whether you're in India or whatever, right? Because the temples, the stores, the shops, the saris, So when we went to India the first time, we were like, oh wow, this could have been anywhere in Chatsworth as well. It's the same thing. All these Indians here, they just speak in a different language, so they don't speak in English.
And like Indians, we like oil, we always surface to the top. We were not given schools and any form of education and things, but in that sugarcane plantation, they made their own schooling system, they made their own little community that they didn't want their kids to go through what they wanted. So right now we have all the top leaders in South Africa, most of them are Indian descent.
And also because of apartheid, the Indian government didn't want to have anything to do with South Africa. So they cut all ties from sports to trade to whatever. So people had to go get the saris from India on their own and bring them back home. The pots, the pans, and whatever. There was no trade. I mean, there was obviously backdoor stuff, but officially the Indian government said no. You practicing apartheid, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. So they had all these rebel cricket tours and whatever. You must have heard about that from West Indies, from India, Australia. But so it was tough. It was very tough. Yeah. Fortunately, we grew up a little later, so we might not have been that affected as our parents. But even our parents probably didn't even know that much. This was just normal life for them, where they lived under segregation and could only travel in a certain bus, like my wife was saying, visit certain bathrooms, travel, and go certain places. A lot of places were a no-no. And then we grew up with that same mentality.
For us, especially say people in the US, right, you take freedom for granted, right? Even in India. So I have this aunt, right? So this aunt and her younger sister. So one of her daughters married a Filipino, right? So and their kids are like the cutest kids ever. So and one of them was married a South African boy recently. So my cousin, right? She's married a Filipino. So she says, in Tonga where they live, all the Indians, you have to be in one place. The blacks could never come into that township. And these are my aunts and right? They are telling you the stories and your cousins, roughly at your age. And then you start realizing that there are a lot of things that you take for granted. But there she says, no, in the theater, so my aunt would tell me, oh, I went to a movies, you go to movies with her mom. So we say, so how was it? She says, yeah, it will be like different queue for whites, different for us. So I innocently asked her, so in the bank, if there are different queues, the white queue was empty, and what would happen if you stand there? So this guy is like a professor, one of mine, he said they would whip you.
Yeah.
So I was so scared even to hear that. Right? So a lot of things that we don't even value. So here is somebody who is a well-read professor, and he's saying, if you stand in the wrong queue, they will whip you. So South Africa as a country has gone through so much of pain. So one hand we had the whole, while Indians had our own share of problems, we had the black South Africans who have gone through hell.
So I'll just educate you quickly on how the
Where did you come here?
no, that's fine, you can hear me, right? So just how we were segregated in our country. So think of a round circle, right? And it was very strategically planned that the black community will be on the outer circle, right? Then we had the Indian community, and then we have a race which is called the colored community. It's a mixture of any two races, but mostly like an African back home and a white Dutchman would give us the colored community. And then in the very middle will be the white community. So they were such that if there's a fight that breaks off in the black community, which is the bigger number of people, it'll go first to the Indians, then the coloreds. By that time, the white community had enough time to pack up and leave. So it was not just, oh, you in this area, that area. It was very well thought out. So that's how we were doing. I remember when I was 10 years old and I went to a bathroom, and I still remember the sign saying white only. And I needed to go to the bathroom, 10 years old, I know. And I'm standing there with my legs crossed, and my mom, I need to go to the bathroom. And she goes to this place and she says, oh, my daughter wants to use the toilet and we're at the beach. She was like, no, you have a security standing there, a big lady, and saying, no, you need to go, use the one that's 1 mile down. 10 hours I am, my mother said, we're at the beach, go in the water. So that's what we had to do. I just want to share that with you guys.
How is it now? Do you still have the same issue?
No. So with regards to whites and blacks and the apartheid system, no, we don't. But South Africa is actually going through a change, and like every country with this change from slavery to the way it is right now, it takes a process. People are fighting back and rebelling. But now I think a lot of people feel that there's reverse apartheid that's happening. When we now given the black the opportunity and the freedom of South Africa when Nelson Mandela was freed, but now people are feeling like, hey, let's abuse our status and take advantage. And the poor Indian man was never white enough, and now he's never black enough. So we're always fighting for what our
Do you know anything about the 1949 rights?
I wasn't born.
A little, yes. So even there as well, we found out that there's obviously a lot of stories, but it was the white people that actually instigated the black people to attack Indians and so on. Because they wouldn't have just done it on their own. So in 1949, there was a lot of riots where the black people said, we don't want the Indians here anymore, you need to go back. And of course,
Xenophobia. Yeah.
there's nowhere to go. And it's important that you brought up that question, because right now, there's xenophobia in South Africa, which is happening quite a lot. So the government's trying to stop it, where they trying to get rid of foreigners, but not just any foreigners, it's more foreigners from Africa, because there's a lot of Indians, there's a lot of Pakistanis, there's a lot of Nigerians and so on in South Africa now, because South Africa has what's called an open border, so you can go and come as you please. So a lot of people are taking advantage of it, unfortunately, including the criminals. So the local people are like, oh, you're coming and taking over our jobs and shops and all that stuff. So yeah, so 1949 was bad. A lot of Indians died as well. But yes.
Just to add, I took this 30 seconds to pull up this photograph. Now, this photograph is of that famous
Mandela.
Mandela cell, right? So if you were to stand in the cell, I think it would at least be as wide as this table, and then maybe this one, 8 by 7 to 8 feet, right? So I was lucky because normally they close the cell on that day, it was open, so I told my daughter, so if I get lucky to stand inside, you should take a picture.
That was very fortunate because it's closed
It's
all the
always
time.
closed.
Yeah.
So I go, I stand there, and in about 15-20 seconds, you actually start shivering. Right? So there's only one small window, and only this place. And then I think, this man was in this jail for 18 years, 1-8. Out of the total 27 years he was in prison, 18 years he's in this cell. I was telling myself, you put me here for 18 minutes, I will turn into an animal, right? You would have so much rage. But yet, when he comes out of prison, right, Mandela to me is a god, because they could have easily said, the amount of writing that could have happened, right, is crazy. But he tries to get people together. And one good movie you could watch is Invictus. If you watch Invictus, it has a good taste for how Mandela brought this together. And to me, I kept praying that God, if Mandela was alive for some more time, right? Probably we would have seen even better times. But what he has done to calm people down is amazing.
I have a question. You did a lot of work, obviously, background work on all this. So, did you try to connect up with people from your kind of background, people who also been trying to search? Is there some kind of a forum, or have you tried to help, or have people got in touch with you now? Because you've been doing so much of work. It will be, I'm sure there are tons of people who are also trying to do but don't have the resources.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that, to do something on that?
Thank you. So that is my next project on the bucket list. For me, the first bucket list was to find my ancestor. I did. Then I never thought I could write a book, so that journey took about 4 long years to write the book. But during this course, I meet people like you who are trying to look at people in India. I have some PhD scholars from all over the place who are saying, Krishna, for this ship list, so it's a crazy data quality problem. We don't have the data, but I just hope we can connect the dots to help people. If you are in Jamaica or Trinidad, you want to know which part of UP you came from. Today, there's no clue. The archives, the state of archives in India, you would cry. I went to Tamil Nadu because that's the ode from where my great-grandfather left, and you just need to see the archive and you get scared. So in very poor form, that is my dream project, where if you can get the data, if you can digitize, and probably you can help connect the dots.
Because I know a lot of South Africans are looking for their roots back, because I don't know where my roots are as well. Going back to the caste system and stuff, I am from North India, and my husband is from South India, and that's all we about know where we are from. But we married and feel it wasn't an issue, North and South. We just humans fell in
You
love.
spoke English, so we
Yeah.
can easily communicate.
But Krishna, you can use this website as a platform,
Yeah.
Exactly.
start bringing people together, and then they'll share notes and then exchanges, and each one can give tips and guidance to others. Not just you, right? I mean, you can be the catalyst.
Very good, because I know the pain of searching for 15-20 years for all this stuff. I think that's a great idea.
So a lot of us give up after the first year,
Yeah.
right? Because it's a lot of work. We know that the filing system and the database is like hitting a rock all the time. But I mean, the fact is you pursued it, you got an answer. I think is a good way to start that flow.
This will be yes.
So, Killa, what I'm really amazed at is, the amount of persistence that you've had to follow up on this project for 40 years, 35 years, whatever the time frame was. What really motivated you to get to this?
Here is my sister. She knows my grandmother. So I was very close to her. So during when I was a child and so on, everything that she's saying, she's talking about her husband, her father-in-law, and we are growing up with that kind of a grey, hazy picture of your ancestor. But after I learned about that indenture, right, that's when I thought, now I just have to find him. And to this day, there is a Christmas miracle, right? So on Christmas Eve, right, that lady, her name is Gubli. I didn't want to put her name in the book because in South Africa she's a government servant, so I didn't put her name in the book. But think of it, on a Christmas Eve, why on earth would you keep the archive open in the first place? And then from an hour later, she does so. That miracle, if she didn't do, I probably would still be searching.
That is a miracle because in South Africa, from December 13th, everything gets shut down because it's vacation time and it's our summer, like how we have summer vacation here. So everybody's on vacation mode. So I'm even surprised that they were open on that day for you.
That and which after that, right, so I thought the motivation to write the book was for the younger generation. I thought they should have some sense for Indian history. Our generation and more so the newer generation like Imara, right? I want people to understand as to what happened. Because this part, very little documentation, hardly any history books talk about India.
So I really wanted to take a few more minutes and talk about Krishna. I've been working with him for the last 10 years. We worked together at Wipro. I flew in last night from Washington, D.C. to be part of this event. And I used to live in Boston, went to school here. First of all, people like Krishna definitely should take up topics like this, right? Where there is a personal cause as well as a social cause, right? Very nicely marries both the cause. I think around 10 years back, he spoke to me that hey, this is something which he's doing. And whenever we met, we talked about the progress. And every time I talked to him, I found his spirits and his enthusiasm, right, multiplied. It was almost like Moore's law, right? That after 6 months, right, the processing power becomes double and cost of chips become half. So I used to look Krishna in that light. The second thing which I felt in this entire journey was, while he was very emotional about this whole thing, but also he was very rational, right? He exactly knew which leads to follow, which leads to drop, which ones to, which people to go after, right? And I sometimes got perplexed at how somebody can have that kind of a balance, right, between heart and head, which he was doing. And finally, before publishing, we sat in New Jersey office of Wipro, and he walked me through the entire presentation, right, and he said, I have found everything. And the happiness that I saw in him, right, the sheer joy that I could see, right, and then I felt that a cause like this, right, if you are pursuing, right, with your heart, with your determination, I think all the positive forces start working around you. So the miracle, right, and all that which you're talking about. I think that's something which happens, that positivity comes and people help you, right, for the greater cause. One thing I would definitely like to say that such issues and such causes, when you look at the rear view, and one way is that you just brush it aside and you say it was history, right? But the other thing is that it needs to be captured and it needs to be brought out for people to know their roots and for other people to know their roots, right? That how they have been, right, brought up and how somebody has been brought up and how the ancestors have gone through. And then is there any learnings from that, right? If you look at today, there are 3 mega trends happening in this planet. So on one end, you have this whole digitization, digital stuff that's going on, where a company like Amazon can be the biggest retailer without having a square feet of retail store. A company like Airbnb can be biggest hotelier without having a single square feet of hotel. A company like Uber can be the largest taxi company without having a single taxi. So that's one trend that's happening. It's a lot of disintermediation, a lot of transformation. The second trend, if you see, that is happening is that there is a renewed nationalism, right, across the world, right? There's a renewed closing of borders and economy and, that stuff. What does it mean to the larger population of the world? Today, Indians are, every 6th person on this planet is an Indian. And I'm not even talking about people with Indian origin. I'm talking about people who have Indian citizenship, right? Or who had Indian citizenship in their current life. There's 1.3 billion, around 7 billion is the population of this planet. So anything that happens in the world, it affects Indians, right? Because they are so pervasive in the world. So that's the second thing, is that this whole renewed, right, closing the borders, right? Closing the economies, closing the Brexit's happening, the US going in a different direction. But the third very good trend which you would see now is that this whole concept of social ledgers and social accounting, right? And corporate social responsibility. And that translating into individuals like you and us, right? In America, the average giving is around 3% amongst people above the age of 50, and, below the age of 50, and 5% of their annual income above the age of 50, which is the giving and giving attitude of this country. I come from India. I run a very large NGO in India. In fact, we were going to do a fundraiser today here, but because of Muharram, we are not doing it. It's got postponed. It's a musical evening. I'll send out the invites to you. Now it is on November 7th. Somehow we, as Indians, have not been great givers. And our giving, right, usually goes to temples and Tirupatis and Ganpatis and Sai Babas and all that. So that is something which probably we need to think through, that is there something that we can learn. So in these three mega trends happening, thank you, Krishna, for bringing this together to light, right? I hope that we will have more younger people, right, going in this direction, trying to explore the past and learn. While it is said that this is the best time for the human race on this planet, right, with least wars happening right now, with one of the most peaceful eras, right, in the world, in the human history. But I still feel that we as individuals can do so much more to help those who may be going in that direction. This whole Saudi Arabia story is amazing, which Krishna was brought it out, right, that there is a large number of people who are moving in that direction. And, and with this whole power of social media, which you were talking about, right, there is so much as an individual we can do today, right? We don't need to become a full-time social worker. We don't need to, go out and put a big commune to do these kind of stuff. As an individual, on your computer, right, all you have to do is find some time and find a reason and a cause. So thank you very much, my friend, for putting it. It was a great book. I personally read it. Feel very proud to be working with Krishna. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, we love the group photograph, but when you get time, you should go to snehalaya.org. So, Rajiv does some amazing work, far beyond what most of us can imagine. It's called Snehalaya, SNEHALAYA.org. I hope you'll get time to interact with him after this, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, in summary, they work with the children of sex workers in India. So they do a lot of work from education to health, to giving them career paths and so on. So they have this organization outside, very close to Pune. So although he could be doing a lot of other things in life, that's what he does. So very, very amazing. Rajiv, thank you. Thanks for coming.
I want to add one point to your question, how he was able to do this. This guy is a bulldog. He doesn't let go. And I'll share one incident. We went to engineering. We did our undergrad together, and I am entrance exam. I remember this one incident very clearly. So we wrote the exam. We came out, and this guy is like running around saying, "I nailed it! I nailed it! I want to get it!" And I was like, "Shut up! If you get it, come and talk. I'll wear your name on my chest and I'll walk around." And then a few months later, he comes back and he says, "Venkat, I nailed it. I got it. I am lucky." So yeah, I've been humbled and I can understand.
So those who don't know, I am, right, in India. So the ratio of number of applicants and the select, right? So the select to number of applicants is much, much lower, right? Means there are far more number of applicants as compared to Harvard here. Okay, so that means that's the level of competition that goes with. And Krishna did his master's MBA from one of the top IIMs in India.
Actually, you are making Soumya feel very nice, Rafina feel very nice. So you got my classmate from Yogesh here and Richie and Narendra as well.
Good. Yeah. So it's one of the finest.
But the toughest exam to get through.
I tell her that every day.
So we have about 15 more minutes, so maybe one or two more questions and then we can take a group photograph. Any questions? Yeah.
More than questions, I think I just want to make a comment on two things I observed. The first thing is the persuasiveness through which you went through the journey, right? I feel like a lot of younger generations have two teenagers. It's amazing how fast they're ready to give up. It's amazing how it has to work so quicker for them, everything. So I feel like this is one of the examples wherein we can take that and say that whatever your cause is, it could be personal, it could be for social reasons, it could be something that gives you joy, forgetting about everything else. Everything takes time. Everything that matters takes time. I think that's a good example if you can, like I'm sure that your 16-year-old must have observed through, and that's a life lesson. So whatever we want to teach our kids, if we can become that person in trying to do that, in believing it and pursuing it till it gets there, I think that's a great thing we can all learn. And it's one more time I have learned that it's worth it. So I think that's something I observed, and I'm glad that you found it. Even if you didn't find it, the whole journey was worth it. And then the second thing is just listening to your South African stories and the history. It's just amazing how we are today and what all things that we take it for granted. So I think it's something, as your friend, I didn't get your name, but to try to give it back. I mean, we all live in a very comfortable place and we worry about the things that are not really should be worrying about. So taking time to acknowledge that we already are in a very good time and see that, if we could give more and consider more, even if we can't give anything, being positive, being happy for what you are, and being more accommodating, more adaptable to everyone that you meet, judging less, I think we'll do much more being in that frame of mind. I think those are just two of my observations after hearing everybody's stories.
So I'll just piggyback on you. I was going to follow up and say something, but thank you for bringing the second part up. I think all of us are intentioned in some way. We may not be laborers, but we all left our country for the benefit of our kids. We want better future, better life, maybe not 5 rupees anymore, but we want the bigger bucks, right? But how many of us in this room, like when I went to India, I only went to India 2 years ago. That was my dream to go to India, and when I went there, and I was like, this is my motherland. And ever since then, I started to say, even though I do back to South Africa, what am I doing back to this country where my grassroots started? So I am personally giving back a lot to India. I go back, I went last year, I picked a school, we donated with the help of my company, we gave a donation to 250 kids. We did mental, physical, dental, and eye exams to 200 kids that came from the slums. I made sure I orchestrated to make sure I'm giving back. I'm going back this year again to do it, the same treatment for 1,000 children in a school. So how are you, with the best universities that you're coming from, with the best schools that you go, how are you impacting your community back home? I think if everyone makes a conscious decision and does a little bit, not give it only to the affluent temples, because my biggest thing when I went to New Jersey and someone said, oh, I gotta take you to this huge temple that's made out of marble, I was like, I went and I said, what a waste of money. Take that same money and give it back to the community that needs it back in your country. Why serve a big idol when you can serve an individual?
And I was extremely upset because I couldn't even touch the temple. Like, don't touch it, it's marble. Oil to go on the
Yes.
I mean, what kind of a temple is this? We can't touch the temple.
So my thing is,
Then you keep talking. So now we have exactly 10 minutes before they knock at the door. So to take a picture, shall we?
Yeah.
So